Okay, so the story on this particular, the reason I'm making this particular video is about a month ago, maybe about 6 weeks ago, I went for a ride at one of our local trail systems. It's the Rockland Preserve. It's in the Rockland Preserve area, but it's actually a trail called Northern Exposure, or some people know it as Pisgah, but not to be confused with the Pisgah that's over in the western North Carolina area. So it's rocky, it's rooty, but it's mostly rocky. And I took a real nice tire slice to the sidewall. I mean, pretty solid. You can't tell much from here, but what I'm gonna do is clean this up just a little bit so you can see what it is I'm trying to show you here. I don't want to get it too clean because part of this is how this guy does his job. So check this out. So this here, let me get a nice sharp focus. It should look terrible. And in fact, if you look right in the top here, you can also see a little bit of a cut. This should look terrible because it was terrible. This was a sidewall cut on a fat bike tire. From some sharp rocks, and this happened about 6 weeks ago. And what you're looking at, not kidding, what you're looking at there is, and I've ridden this bike several times since at varying tire pressures, and I'm holding pressure. There are no less than 5 plugs in here to seal up this hole. Tire was fairly new. As you recall earlier in this video, I said these just started becoming generally available. Tire was fairly new, and I was heartbroken, as much as one can be about inanimate things. I was heartbroken that I might have to replace a brand new tire just because of a sidewall cut. And as it turns out, I stuffed, so I've got a system. I stuffed 3, let me see if I can get in on this. I stuffed 3 plugs in there. I take the core out, I take the valve core out. I put 2 ounces of, my gosh, what's it called? It's the orange seal, Sub-Zero. Let it fly around the tire, let it get, let it sort of gather around the plugs. And then I jam it with a CO2 or 2, and as it turned out, that wasn't enough. The air started to leak out, and I was about to abandon ship and just walk out of the trail, walk out from the trail, and I decided, you know what, I did some quick math in my head and said, for the price of a fat bike tube, which I did not bring with me on that particular ride, I could afford to jam 2 more, plugs in here and see if that works. So I put 2 more plugs in for a total of 5. Incidentally, let me show you this. That's what they look like. So I put 2 more plugs in for a total of 5. There are 5 plugs, like I said, in here. And I've been riding with folks. I jammed it with another CO2. I was out of CO2 at that point. 3 CO2 cartridges, 16 grams each. And I ended up throwing, I have a tire pump, so I pumped it up. And it held air. I ran 10 pounds in it, 10 pounds of pressure. Rode it for the rest of the ride that way. Finished the ride, caught up to my buds, and we're solid. So what I'm trying to show you here is different points of view. I did come home later and cut the tails off when I got home after I was sure it was sealed up. And this looks awful, but I can't tell the difference. If the tire still performs, everything works as it should. This bike has been together and it's been shredding trails ever since. Real happy with how things are running on this bike. And I've even varied the pressure. I checked the pressure with a mechanical gauge that goes up to 15 psi and quarter psi increments, and everything's holding together. So I'm gonna ride this thing. until it lets loose, or until the tire goes away. And for 11 or 12 bucks, plus the cost of some CO2, plus 2 ounces of sealant, you know, I saved an $80 tire, or maybe even a little bit more than that. So, all right, so that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Dynaplug plugs seem to do the trick. I think the combination of hitting it with some fresh sealant, plugging it up, and hitting it with some CO2, and then you know, getting the sealant all smeared around in there, and you know, sort of gumming up the puncture certainly helps. I'm not entirely sure whether I'd be fortunate with another, you know, 5 plugs and something like this, but I'm telling you right now, here's an example of it working, and working very well. So let me know if you've had, you know, what your experience has been like with Dynaplug or any of these new sort of tire plug kits. Genuine Innovations has one now, and there are a couple of others that are out there. As always, thanks for watching. You know, and let me know what you do, what your approach is to sealing up tubeless tire punctures trailside. I just like tubeless because it's not blowing sealant everywhere. I don't have to dismount the tire. I don't have to throw a tube in. Throwing a tube in anymore is my last resort. I've been pretty lucky and pretty fortunate to be using Dynaplug plugs for all of my trailside punctures, and they seem to hold together. I put the bike away, inspect it, trim the tail, put the bike away, and can take it out the next day on a ride, and everything seems to be working just fine. Anyway, thanks for watching, and see you out there.